Now, we've got in the studio a man of many careers, you might say, Mr. Merle Temple. And how are you this morning?
Doing good, Dale. Glad to be here. Thank you.
All right. And the reason I say you're a man of many careers is you've kind of evolved throughout your life into different aspects of different things. But you were originally from Tupelo and moved away at some period of time in your life?
I moved away to all over Mississippi and then to Birmingham and finally to Georgia and lived over there for a long time. Lived probably 3 or 4 lives in one, but great fodder for a novelist.
All right. And, of course, you went into the law enforcement field and went through different aspects of the law enforcement field. At one time, were you with kind of like which branch of the law enforcement were you with?
Well,
the narcotics.
Originally, right out of high school, 100 years ago or so, I went caught a train right out of high school, went to Washington and worked for the FBI as a fingerprint technician. But then came home, went to Ole Miss, worked my way through Ole Miss, and just as I was graduating, they were just starting the State Bureau of Narcotics here in Mississippi, and President Nixon had just declared the first war on drugs. And a big reorganization in Washington, which filtered down to the states, and the states pretty much adopted or copied the federal laws. And the State Bureau was formed, and so I went right out of Ole Miss. Just within a month or two, I went right into the Bureau, working undercover for a long time, and then promoted through the years, and eventually became the first captain in the State Bureau of Narcotics.
Okay. And, of course, you've written a story now called A Ghostly Shade of Pale, and it's not a true story, but it is kind of taken from some events maybe that you lived through or been through, and kind of an intermingling of different events, I guess.
Ghostly it is fiction, but it's fiction based on my experiences in the Bureau, and there were a lot of good things that happened to us back in those days and some very tragic things. So that's recounted in the book, and tried to pay honor and homage to a lot of my friends who were with me in that time, some who didn't make it through that time, some who lost their lives, and some who just lost their moral center when they were in the subculture of those days that they were asked to infiltrate. So it was a time of where many divergent elements kind of came to a point of convergence. And like I said, it is a rich time and period for an author to draw from, because it was the first war on drugs, which then was tied to a rebellion against mom and daddy and all of their values.
Yeah, it seemed like the whole culture at that time just took a major shift. And you went from leave it the Cleaver type families to all of a sudden it was more like Maud type families, And you had those young folks that were shifting gears and was, just seemed like everything just went way out to the far right, you might say.
Yeah, it really did, and there were, of course, the protests against the war, Vietnam War, were going on then. Civil rights unrest and marches and protest, and even the Ku Klux Klan was still active in those days, and plus we had the Bureau went on to become named by the federal government the best state agency of its kind in the country, and we were a break from the past because we were mostly all college educated, and that was certainly not the history of state law enforcement in Mississippi at that time. It was basically everywhere else was who do you know?
Yeah, the good old boy system.
Who do you have right? Who do you know to get a job? And so a lot of people really did not like us, and we were enforcing the law equally and fairly across the state, regardless of who you knew, and that made a lot of people really uncomfortable. And so it was a time where you didn't really know often who friend and foe was, and just because they wore a badge didn't mean that they were your friend, and in fact could be your worst enemy. And so it was just a time that it's a history I think that we reopened in this book. I think a lot of people think they know, but I'm not sure that they really do. And we had so many airfields, and still do around the state, small airfields of cotton dusters and all that kind of stuff. and intelligence agencies of the federal government were flying. They were hiring mercenaries to fly guns into Central and South America, whichever side we were supporting at the time. And the problem was they weren't coming back empty. They were coming back loaded to the gills with drugs. And the only question was whether it was sanctioned or unsanctioned. So they were just they actually are geopolitical elements, to the book also. And it's just it's hard to categorize this book. But Jim Clemente at Criminal Minds, a TV show, says it's a big crime story as literature. And we're very fortunate that Jim he read the manuscript and he's endorsed the book and gave us a great recommendation. And praise the Lord, it's being pitched in Hollywood right now for a movie.
Wow. Of course, I'm going to say you're going to probably get deeper into the criminal element than, say, like a John Grisham would. But, John kind of touched on some things in his novels that really kind of pulled the nation in to kind of go back and look at that and some of the stuff. But this book here is really going to take us back to a point in time and put us behind doors that we don't know what happened behind years ago.
Right, absolutely. It's a behind-the-scenes look at what it was really like when we were battling not only who we were told were the bad guys, but also battling people in the political structure, and it's a different look. And I will tell people who are listening here, old Tupelo lives again in the 1970s, right. So there'll be places and things that you might recognize in there. Right. And we try to be faithful to that, and you would like this too. Elvis is in the book. Can't write about that period in Tupelo to Memphis without
put a little Elvis in there.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah.
And one of the other aspects, and I don't know if you hit on it or not, but even during this time, I've done some research on what was known or deemed as the Dixie Mafia. They kind of infiltrated everything from Biloxi to Little Rock, Arkansas, and everywhere in between. But is some of that influence in there as well?
Yeah, the Dixie Mafia is definitely in the book. The Dixie Mafia, the regular mafia, you might say, the crime families, but the Dixie Mafia is very prominent. And during the time I was in the bureau, some of the things that happened to me personally, which were great fodder for the book. I was held hostage for 6 hours when I was working undercover solo in those days because there weren't very many of us, while I listened to them debate where they were going to dump my body when they kill me. And then I met two contract killers out of Memphis who were hired to kill me. We had a standoff, me and them, at an old abandoned service station at the Horn Lake exit right south of Memphis. And then, of course, a really tragic day in 1976 when we were ambushed doing a heroin deal, and the heroin dealers had a sniper sitting on a railroad trestle who opened fire on us, and it was a terrible gun battle that day. And so many things happened, seeing one of my agents and a great friend get killed and shot dead at 26, and who I still remember. So again, we're trying to keep faith with that time and tell the story honestly in an entertaining way, and also reflect really what was one man's search for God also.
Okay. All right. Of course, the book's called The Ghostly Shade of Pale, and actually you started working on a sequel to this, hadn't you?
Yeah, we're already writing the sequel, which is called A Rented World, and about 5 or 6 chapters into that, and we plan to have a trilogy. Ghostly, we're hoping to have a kickoff locally at Mr. Reed's bookstore here in Tupelo.
The dates?
Don't have a firm date. We'd say probably around the end of April, early May, I would guess, and we'll have our online kickoff at the same time. And it's up on Amazon now for pre-orders and through merletemple.com. Also, you can go in and reserve. Somebody reserved 3 copies yesterday, so the word is beginning to get out, and we're really anxious to get on with it and start the book tour.
Right. Have we already hit publication yet? Is it?
No, it's going to the printers, and so we'll be waiting for that, and so that's why we think it'll probably be about another 5-6 weeks
before the books are printed and ready to go on sale.
And but we're building our list, and we're talking to a lot of area civic clubs and around, getting really warm, gracious receptions wherever we go, and seeing so many people that I hadn't seen in 30 and 40 years. And they look at me now when they see me walk in, and they say, "Is that him?" Can't be. He can't be that old.
Now, how long did it take you to write the book?
Off and on, I would guess probably a couple of years or more. Off and on, you write it. I mean, I did a lot of writing when I was in law enforcement. Then I went into the corporate world in the Bell South, and I was in a lot of political campaigns too, presidential and local, and I wrote speeches for political candidates, and wrote a lot of technical papers and guest editorials for the corporate world. But writing a book is entirely a novel. It's an entirely different thing. It's very hard. It's very different. You have to get in.
Tie a lot of stuff together.
You do. And Jim Clemente said it was so detailed and complex, yet beautifully sinister, according to Jim, and that it immerses you in absolute reality. And so those are very kind words. But it's a product of a long work where you edit, you re-edit, you give up on it. You think at times it's the worst thing anybody's ever written, and then you're not sure, and then you finally get to your semi-final product, and you get people to read it for you, as I did Jim Clemente in Hollywood, and ask, is this any good? And then the reviews we've gotten back have just been gracious and very very well received, and so we go from here, and I'm hoping that. Still, I like to say I'm still learning this craft. I'm hoping I'll get better with each book, and we do plan a trilogy. But it'll all be based on experiences from my life and rich life, some good, some bad, some very tragic, but all great fodder to draw from, and things I think probably a lot of people will identify with, their own struggles. And Michael, the central character in the book, he's kind of a cop philosopher, and he comments on the world in which he travels, like Philip Marlowe did in those novels, or Travis McGee from John D. McDonnell series. They were philosophers, or private eye philosophers, whatever, that commented on the world in which they travel, and I was very influenced by those writers, and especially McDonnell, and so I think they'll find a lot in there that's very interesting, not your usual read, I think.
Do you find a lot of Southern culture too as well throughout the book, the novel, or is it centered pretty much in the South?
Yeah, it is. I think people who like what they call Southern Gothic.
Yeah. And
somebody asked me in an interview at Invitation Tupelo magazine, which is out now, with that picture they took of me in the shadows, where I said I look like an old mafia hitman. They asked me that the character reminded them of me. And they said, was I dealing with my own past? And I said, a lot of Southern Gothic writers do that. And I said, I think I do too. I think you deal with some of your triumphs and your failures, and it's very cathartic, really, to write about those times. But yes, it's all centered in the South and the land and the time that I loved and still love.
All right, and the book's called A Ghostly Shade of Pale. Should be out in the next 6 weeks or so, right. And going to be some book signings coming up, so we need to look for that. Give us a website if folks want to kind of go on and follow what's going on with the book.
The best thing to do is go to Merle Temple, MERLETEMPLE.com, and you can see the feel and look of that website and kind of get a little feel of it, see some pictures there that in the slideshow, and there's a place there where if you're interested, you can click and fill out a little form and reserve a copy, and I'd be glad to do that and autograph it and get it to you as soon as the book comes out. And plus, I just encourage everybody to come down to, when the announcement comes out, to come down to Mr. Reed's store. We're going to have make it a kind of like a party and a festive atmosphere. It's a first-time book signing, and so we're going to do it upright.
Right. All right. And don't forget about me when the movie comes out.
I already got a part picked out for you.
Right.
You're going to play Elvis.
All right. We'll go out to cut you loose for the day, but we'll check in next Thursday with us for Our Town. I'm your host, Dale Rushing. Thank you.